The call that changed a community, a story of justice, bias, and hope. Donald leaned back against the wide trunk of an ancient oak tree, the afternoon sun warming his face. Oakwood Park was his sanctuary, a place where he could sit peacefully, dream big, and let the worries of the world fade away. He closed his eyes, inhaling the scent of freshly cut grass and blooming flowers, content in the stillness. His mother, Mayor Angela Trump, had promised to pick him up shortly, and Donald was happy to wait. Nearby, Joanna sat stiffly on a park bench. She was a middle-aged woman who often frequented the park with her grandchildren, though today she was alone. Her sharp eyes scanned the area until they landed on Donald. A sense of unease crept over her, born not of Donald's actions, but her own assumptions. "What is he doing here?" she muttered under her breath, suspicion igniting in her mind. Donald shifted slightly, feeling the weight of her gaze. He opened his eyes and noticed Joanna staring at him with a frown that deepened as their eyes met. Her lips pressed into a tight line as she stood and began walking toward him with purpose. "What are you doing here?" Joanna demanded, her voice cutting through the tranquil park. "This is a family park, not a hangout for troublemakers." Donald blinked, startled. "I'm waiting for my mom," he replied evenly. "She's picking me up soon." Joanna wasn't convinced. Her eyes narrowed and her hands clenched. "I've been watching you. You've been sitting here too long. I think you should leave before I call the police." Donald's chest tightened. The accusation, so baseless and unfair, stung deeply. "Ma'am," he said, trying to keep his voice steady, "I'm not doing anything wrong. I've been coming here for years. I'm just waiting for my mom." But Joanna had already made up her mind. She reached into her purse, pulling out her phone with a shaking hand. "I don't believe you," she said sharply. Donald's heart began to race as he stood slowly, holding his hands out in a placating gesture. "Please don't call the police," he said, his voice tinged with desperation. "I'm telling the truth. My mom will be here any minute." Joanna ignored him and dialed 911. "Yes," she said, her voice loud and clear. "There's a suspicious black teenager loitering in Oakwood Park. He won't leave, and I'm worried about the families here." Donald felt a wave of disbelief and fear wash over him. His mind raced. He had done nothing wrong, yet he was being treated like a criminal. The moments stretched painfully as Donald stood frozen, wondering how this could escalate. His mother's words echoed in his mind. "Stay calm, be respectful, and don't give them a reason to doubt you." But the weight of Joanna's accusations bore down on him, leaving him feeling helpless. Suddenly, the screech of tires tore through the park's calm. 2 police cars arrived, their lights flashing red and blue. Donald's stomach sank as the officers stepped out, their expressions unreadable. "What seems to be the problem here?" one officer asked, addressing Joanna. Joanna wasted no time explaining. "This young man has been loitering and refused to leave when I asked. I'm concerned about everyone's safety." Donald opened his mouth to defend himself, but the second officer held up a hand. "We'll talk to you in a minute," he said, his tone curt. As Joanna relayed her distorted account, Donald felt the familiar pang of frustration and fear. His truth felt small and powerless against her assumptions. When the officers finally turned to him, their questions came quickly. "What are you doing here?" one asked, his tone brisk. "I'm waiting for my mom," Donald said, fighting to keep his voice calm. "She's the mayor." The officers exchanged a glance. Skepticism etched across their faces. "Do you have any ID?" the other officer asked. "No, sir," Donald said. "I'm only 14. I don't carry ID." The officers' expressions hardened as they continued their questioning. Each word felt like a judgment, as though he had to prove his innocence. The weight of their doubt pressed on him, making it hard to breathe. A crowd had begun to gather, phones held up to record the scene. Donald's anxiety grew. He didn't want to be the subject of a viral video, but he couldn't control how the situation was spiraling. Then, a black SUV pulled up to the curb, and relief flooded Donald's chest. His mother had arrived. Mayor Angela Trump stepped out, her face a mask of controlled fury. The officers straightened immediately, recognizing her. Joanna's jaw dropped as she realized her mistake. "That troublemaker you're questioning is my son," Mayor Trump said, her voice low and cutting. The tension in the air was palpable. The officers fumbled for words, and Joanna's confidence crumbled. "Ma'am," one officer began, "we were responding to a call." "Did you stop to consider why the call was made?" Mayor Trump interrupted. "Or did you assume my son was guilty based on his appearance?" Joanna stammered. "I didn't mean any harm. I was just trying to protect the park." Mayor Trump's eyes narrowed. "Your assumptions could have endangered my son's life. That's harm enough." She turned to the officers. "This incident highlights a serious issue. How often do we let bias cloud our judgment? How often do we fail to question the motives behind actions like this?" The crowd was silent, every word landing with weight. Placing a protective hand on Donald's shoulder, Mayor Trump addressed the onlookers. "No child should feel criminalized for simply existing in a public space. This must stop." Donald looked up at his mother, pride and gratitude shining in his eyes. The experience had shaken him, but her unwavering support gave him strength. As they walked back to the SUV, Mayor Trump's words echoed in his ears. "Change isn't easy, but it's necessary. We all have a role to play in making our community better." The confrontation in Oakwood Park would ripple through the community, sparking conversations about bias, accountability, and justice. And for Donald, it became a defining moment, a reminder of the power of resilience and the importance of standing up for what's right. The next day, the incident dominated headlines and social media platforms, sparking debates about racial profiling and systemic inequality. The video footage recorded by bystanders quickly went viral, with millions sharing the story and expressing outrage at the blatant discrimination. While the local community grappled with its own biases, the incident gained national attention, putting Mayor Trump and her family under intense scrutiny. Jeremiah, now identified as Donald, struggled to balance the newfound attention with his desire for a normal life. At school, he was met with both sympathy and awkward stares. Some classmates treated him like a hero for standing his ground, while others avoided him, unsure of what to say. The experience had shaken Donald's belief in fairness, but it also ignited a fire within him. "You can either let this define you or use it to inspire others," Mayor Trump told Donald one evening as they sat on the porch of their home. Her words were firm, but filled with love. "The world needs to hear your voice." Donald took her words to heart. He started speaking out in his community, joining his mother at town halls and civic meetings. His story became a rallying cry for change, a poignant reminder of how quickly assumptions could escalate into harmful actions. Mayor Trump, meanwhile, faced resistance from some city officials who felt the anti-bias training was unnecessary or too costly. "We've managed fine without it," one council member argued during a heated meeting. But the mayor stood her ground. "Fine isn't good enough," she replied. "Every child deserves to feel safe in their community." The mayor's unwavering stance inspired others to take action. Churches, schools, and community organizations began holding workshops to educate people about unconscious bias and its consequences. Joanna, the woman who had called the police, also decided to step forward, publicly apologizing for her actions. "I thought I was protecting my community," Joanna admitted during a local news interview. "But I see now that my fear was misplaced. I need to do better." Her apology was met with mixed reactions. Some commended her for owning up to her mistake, while others questioned whether it was enough. Donald, for his part, chose to accept her apology. "It's not about holding grudges," he said. It's about making sure this doesn't happen to someone else. As the weeks turned into months, the changes in Oakwood began to take root. The anti-bias training program became mandatory for all city employees, and police officers were required to participate in regular community engagement events. The goal was clear: to rebuild trust and ensure that everyone, regardless of race, felt safe and valued. Donald continued to find his voice, joining his school's debate team and even writing op-eds for the local newspaper. His words carried the weight of his experience and the hope for a better future. "We can't change the past," he wrote in one article, "but we can decide what kind of future we want to build together." The community mural in Oakwood Park became a symbol of unity, with artists from different backgrounds contributing to its creation. Donald was invited to help paint a section, choosing vibrant colors to represent hope and resilience. Each stroke of the brush felt like a step toward healing, a reminder that beauty could emerge from pain. Mayor Trump's leadership during the crisis earned her both praise and criticism. While some lauded her for addressing the issue head-on, others accused her of politicizing the incident. "This isn't about politics," she countered in an interview. "It's about humanity." Despite the challenges, Mayor Trump remained steadfast. She knew that real change required persistence and courage. Her efforts began to inspire leaders in neighboring cities, sparking a regional conversation about racial equity and justice. At home, Donald and his mother often reflected on how far they had come. "Do you think it's worth it?" Donald asked one evening. "All this effort? It's always worth it to stand up for what's right," his mother replied, her eyes filled with conviction. "Even if it's hard, even if it's uncomfortable, it's worth it." As the first anniversary of the park incident approached, the city planned a commemorative event. The mayor, Donald, and other community members were invited to speak, sharing their perspectives on how the incident had shaped their lives and the community. Donald's speech was the highlight of the event. Standing at the podium, he looked out at the crowd, his voice steady as he began. "A year ago, I stood in this very park, scared and unsure of what would happen. Today, I stand here hopeful, knowing that change is possible when we come together." He spoke about the importance of empathy, of seeing each other as human beings rather than stereotypes. His words resonated deeply, drawing a standing ovation from the crowd. In that moment, Donald felt a sense of purpose he had never known before. The event ended with the unveiling of a plaque at the base of the mural, dedicated to the ongoing fight for justice and equality. It read, "In memory of the challenges we've faced and the progress we've made, may we continue to strive for a world where everyone feels seen, heard, and valued." The impact of the park incident continued to ripple through Oakwood and beyond. Schools integrated lessons on diversity and inclusion into their curriculums, and local businesses began hosting community dialogues. The conversations weren't always easy, but they were necessary. For Donald, the experience became a defining chapter in his life. It taught him the power of resilience, the importance of speaking up, and the value of standing together in the face of adversity. As he looked to the future, he carried with him the lessons of that fateful day and the belief that even the smallest actions could spark meaningful change. Mayor Trump's legacy as a leader who turned a moment of crisis into an opportunity for growth was cemented in Oakwood's history. Her unwavering commitment to justice inspired a new generation of leaders, including her own son. The journey wasn't over, but the steps they had taken together marked the beginning of a brighter, more inclusive future. And as the sun set over Oakwood Park, its golden rays illuminating the mural, it served as a poignant reminder of the power of unity and the enduring strength of hope.